That evening, as the sound of clinking wine glasses echoed through the room, Evelyn froze. Before her, her daughter Clara was smiling radiantly, while Nathan, her husband, raised his glass in a toast. "We're finally getting our new villa, Mom. Our family's dream is coming true." On the wall behind them, a cold, empty space glared under the lights, where the painting, Autumn Light, once hung. The entire room was bright, yet Evelyn felt as though she were falling into a bottomless pit. She couldn't speak. Her heartbeat pounded in her ears, loud and dry. That painting wasn't just color and canvas, it was David's soul, her late husband's. He had painted it in his final days, his hands trembling, but his eyes still shining. He had told her, "I want you to have something to look at every morning so you'll still feel that I'm here." Now the painting was gone. No warning. No permission. No sign. Evelyn set down her glass, her voice hoarse. "Where's the painting?" Her question cut through Nathan's laughter, cold enough to make Clara freeze. Nathan turned to her, his eyes gleaming with self-satisfaction. "You mean Autumn Light?" "Mom, I sold it. A collector in the city wanted it." Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. Clara glanced at her husband, then at her mother, looking like a child who had broken something precious and didn't know whether to apologize or make excuses. Mom Nathan thought it was the best choice. "We're putting down payment on the Maple Heights villa. That old painting just hangs there gathering dust. It doesn't bring any value." Something shattered inside Evelyn's chest. Old how could her own daughter, whom she had raised and loved, call her father's painting? Old Evelyn spoke slowly, each word pressed against her breath. "You sold it?" "Yes," Nathan replied, his voice light as if talking about selling a used car. "I got a fair price, $5,000. I think that's reasonable." Evelyn turned away, gripping the back of a chair. $5,000 for her husband's 20 years of devotion, for all the nights he painted until his hands bled, for the memory of their family. Her eyes blurred, not from age, but from pain. "Your father said that painting was never to be sold," she whispered. Nathan laughed. "He's gone, Mom, and you don't need the money. We're building a future here. Clara wants to start a family, but the house is too small." He looked around the warm wooden home that Evelyn and David had lived in for 40 years, as if it were some shabby place. Clara hurried to soften the air, her voice gentle, trying to fix the tension. "Mom, I know Dad loved that painting, but if he were still alive, I think he'd want it displayed somewhere instead of collecting dust at home. Please don't be sad." Evelyn lifted her head. The look in her eyes made Clara flinch. "Do you even know your father, Clara?" Her voice was quiet but hard as stone. "Have you forgotten who paid your college tuition, who sold his only car so you could study in the city? Your father didn't paint for money. He painted to hold this family together." The room froze. Nathan set his glass down, his tone sharpening. "Mom, I understand how you feel, but it's already done. I signed the contract. The money's in the account. Please don't make this a big deal. You signed a contract. Who gave you permission?" Evelyn's voice rose, echoing through the room. Nathan raised an eyebrow. "A son-in-law can help family business, can't he? Or are you planning to keep everything to yourself and not think about your daughter?" The words cut through her like a knife. Clara lowered her head, her lips trembling. Evelyn looked at her daughter and saw no trace of the gentle child she had raised, only the reflection of the man beside her, a man calculating, smooth and greedy. No one spoke. Only the ticking of the clock and Evelyn's uneven breathing filled the air. At last she turned away and said quietly, "Go home. I'm tired." When the door closed, the house fell silent. Evelyn stood in the living room staring at the blank wall where the painting once hung. The afternoon sun streamed through the window, casting light across the thin layer of dust. She imagined David standing there smiling softly. "I told you to keep it safe. Don't let anyone touch it." Tears welled up but didn't fall. She walked to the table, poured herself more tea, and tried to steady her breath. She had faced death loss and loneliness before, but this pain betrayal from those she loved made her tremble. That night, Evelyn couldn't sleep. The wind howled through the eaves like whispers of an angry past. She opened her desk drawer and took out David's notebook. Among the uneven lines of his handwriting, one sentence caught her eye. "If one day autumn light leaves the house, remember, there's something I left inside the frame." She froze. A strange feeling washed over her, a mix of confusion and hope. Inside the frame, she murmured, but the painting was gone and she had no idea where it was. The next morning, just as sunlight touched the window, the phone rang. A warm male voice spoke. "Good morning, Mrs. Miller. My name is Henry Alcott, owner of Riverside Gallery. I'm calling because I currently have your husband's painting, Autumn Light. And well, he asked me to give you something when the time was right." Evelyn sat still, eyes wide. "What did you say?" "The painting hasn't been sold publicly, ma'am. A buyer was about to make a deposit, but when I checked the records, I found a note from Mr. David Miller. He wrote that if this painting ever left your home without your permission, I should contact you immediately. I believe now is the right time." Evelyn gripped the receiver tightly. Her voice shook but was firm. "I'll come right away." When she hung up, her hands no longer trembled. She got dressed, tied her hair back, and looked in the mirror. It was still the face of a 68-year-old woman with fine wrinkles, but her eyes shone with new light. Beneath the pain, a spark had been reignited. Clara and Nathan thought she was weak, that she lived only in memories. They were wrong. Evelyn Miller had never been weak. She'd only been waiting for the right moment to remember who she truly was, the wife of an artist, the mother who once raised her child with paint-stained hands, and the woman who was about to turn everything around. As she stepped outside, Evelyn looked one last time at the empty wall. A faint smile appeared on her lips as she whispered to David, "I'll find it, and this time no one will take it away again." The door closed behind her. Morning light poured into the room, glimmering across the blank wall like the final glow of autumn. The wall was bare, but inside Evelyn's heart the fire had already begun to burn. Evelyn drove through the long, misty road where the pine trees along the way reached into the pale morning light. The small town of Maple Hollow slowly disappeared behind her, giving way to the road that led toward the city. She gripped the steering wheel tightly, feeling her heart heavy yet burning. With every passing mile, the pain began to shift into something else, an icy determination sharp as a blade. When the sign Riverside Gallery appeared, she pulled over and took a deep breath, smoothing her hair. The glass door opened with a soft chime. The gallery was airy, flooded with natural light. The scent of oil paint varnish and dry pine wood reminded her of David's old studio. Behind the counter stood a man in his 60s, silver-haired, wearing a white shirt with the sleeves rolled up. "Mrs. Miller," he said, stepping forward in a calm, courteous tone, "I'm Henry Alcott." Evelyn nodded, shaking his hand. "You said you have the painting Autumn Light." Henry gestured for her to follow. They walked down a hallway lined with classical paintings until they reached the final room where light streamed down from above onto a large canvas covered by a protective cloth. He took hold of the edge and pulled it gently. "Here it is," he said softly. Autumn light appeared in a wash of golden tones. Shades of amber and bronze melted together, reflecting the autumn sunlight David had loved so dearly. The colors were warm, yet the gaze within the painting carried a deep loneliness. Evelyn stepped closer, her fingertips trembling as they brushed the wooden frame. "Oh my God," she whispered. "It's still intact." Henry stood quietly behind her. "I never forgot this man," he said. "He came here 4 years ago with this painting. He didn't sell it. He only asked me to keep a written agreement in case the painting ever left your home without your knowledge." Evelyn turned to him, her eyes glistening. "Why would he do that?" Henry sighed. "He told me, there are things that should never be priced, and one day someone will try to turn it into money." "I think you understand now how right he was." She looked back at the painting, the ache in her chest softening into sorrowful affection. How much did they sell it for Henry? Paused for a moment, then answered quietly, $5,000. Evelyn gave a faint, bitter smile. 5,000 for 20 years of his life. Henry continued gently. "If you'd like to know its real worth, I can tell you. A collector in San Francisco once offered $200,000 for it a few months ago, but Mr. David refused. He said it belonged to his wife." The words struck her like a wave. She felt as if David were standing somewhere nearby, watching her with that same gentle gaze. "You said on the phone there was something he left for me?" she asked, her voice still trembling. Henry nodded, opened a drawer, and took out a thick brown envelope marked by David's familiar, slanted handwriting. "He left this," Henry said, "and told me to give it to you only when I was certain you needed to know." Evelyn took it, her heart pounding beneath the words, "For Evelyn." When the light fades, a small USB drive was attached with tape. Henry spoke quietly. He said that if anyone ever sold or touched the painting without your consent, I was to contact you right away. He believed that when that moment came, the truth needed to be revealed. Evelyn didn't open the envelope yet. Her hand rested on it while her eyes remained fixed on the painting. "I don't know what David prepared, but he must have known this day would come." Henry nodded. "He often talked about you. About your teaching, about how you bought brushes for poor students. He believed that even after he was gone, you would keep defending what you believed in. I think that's why he left this for you." Evelyn sat down on a nearby chair, her heart swelling with emotion. Memories of caring for David during his illness returned the scent of antiseptic, the sound of rain tapping on the studio window, and his final words, "Don't let anyone touch that autumn light." After a long pause, she spoke softly, "Can I take the painting home?" Henry shook his head. "According to the agreement, the gallery must keep the painting until ownership disputes are settled, but you're welcome to visit any time, and if you need help, I'll be here." Evelyn pressed her lips together and nodded. "Thank you. I think I might need it." On the way back, she stopped by the roadside and opened the envelope. Inside was a long, handwritten letter on yellowed paper. The first line read in David's handwriting, "Evelyn, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone, and you're searching for something that's been lost. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, but I needed to be sure you were safe before learning the truth." She read slowly, each word cutting deeper into her heart. "I discovered that Nathan is in serious debt. He hid it from Clara and used her name to guarantee loans I suspect are illegal. I hired someone to look into it. Something isn't right. I didn't want you caught up in it, so I created a separate account, the Aurora Fund. It's in my name, but you're the sole beneficiary. The USB attached contains the evidence and documents. If he continues down this path, contact Rachel Cho, my former attorney. She knows all the procedures. And Evelyn, don't let your kindness be used against you again. Trust your instincts. When you read this, know that I'm still here within that autumn light." Evelyn folded the letter and pressed it to her chest. Tears filled her eyes, not from grief this time, but from the feeling that David was still guiding her. She plugged the USB into her small laptop in the car. The screen lit up with folders, photos, contracts, bank statements, and emails between Nathan and a financial firm. One email subject stood out: collateral autumn light. Blood rushed to her head. Nathan had planned to use her late husband's painting as collateral for his debts. He had calculated everything, and Clara, her daughter, was being deceived. Evelyn closed the laptop, breathing deeply. The road ahead seemed longer, but the midday sunlight streaming through the windshield no longer felt harsh. Inside her, something powerful was awakening, not the grief of a widow, but the resolve of a mother who had been wronged. She turned the car around. Beyond the hill, clouds gathered the sunlight, blazing through them. She whispered to herself, "If my daughter's been deceived, then I'll be the one to end this game." Henry was right. The time had come. Evelyn Miller, the woman everyone thought was fragile, trapped in her memories, now held the truth, her husband's letter, and a secret that could change everything. That afternoon, as fallen leaves covered the path, she stepped into Attorney Rachel Cho's office with the envelope in her hand. Her face was calm, but her eyes gleamed with something fierce. The receptionist looked up and asked, "Who would you like to see?" Evelyn replied in a low, steady voice, "I need to see Ms. Rachel Cho as soon as possible. I have evidence of a family fraud." At that moment, no one could have guessed that the silver-haired woman standing at the reception desk was about to become the center of a story filled with betrayal, justice, and legacy, a story that would forever change the fate of the Miller family. Evelyn sat in Rachel Cho's office, where the afternoon light streamed through the large glass window, casting reflections across rows of thick file shelves. The faint scent of paper and coffee mixed with the soft ticking of a wall clock made her feel as if she were back in her old classroom, the one where she used to teach children to paint their dreams. But this time she wasn't here to teach. She was here to protect what others were trying to take away. Rachel entered, her dark hair neatly tied back sleeves, rolled up, her eyes sharp and alert. "Mrs. Miller," she said, shaking Evelyn's hand. "I've read the documents Mr. David left. In fact, he once sent me a copy of the Aurora Fund agreement, though I never imagined the day would come when it would be needed." Evelyn looked at the young woman sitting across from her, nearly 30 years her junior. Her eyes filled with both trust and weariness. "My husband always planned ahead," she said quietly, "but I trusted people too much." Rachel sat down across from her. "Don't blame yourself," she replied. "David didn't create this fund because he doubted anyone. He did it to protect against any unforeseen risks. According to the documents I have, the Aurora Fund currently holds shares in a tech company worth over $500,000. All profits are registered under your name." Evelyn was stunned. "He never told me I thought all we had left was the little house." "He didn't want you to worry," Rachel said softly. "But there's something important you need to know." She leaned forward. "He included a special clause. The beneficiary can only access the fund if she can prove she's capable of protecting her assets from exploitation." Evelyn immediately understood the meaning behind the words. "You mean," Nathan Rachel nodded. David suspected him. "He once asked me to review some of Nathan's loan documents, and I found several fraudulent accounts under false names. Before we could act, David passed away. If Nathan really is involved with illegal debts, the Aurora Fund may be the only thing preventing him from destroying your family." Evelyn leaned back in her chair, her eyes distant. "So what do I need to do now?" Rachel opened her laptop and typed quickly. "I'll file an injunction to freeze all assets connected to Mr. David, including the painting. I'll also notify Riverside Gallery to suspend any pending transactions. As for you," she paused, meeting Evelyn's gaze, "you need to prepare yourself. Nathan won't stay quiet once he finds out the Aurora Fund exists." Evelyn let out a faint, bitter smile. "Rachel, I've survived cancer, I've buried my husband, and I've watched my own daughter become a stranger to me. I think I can handle one more battle." Rachel was silent for a moment, then smiled. "I believe you can." On the drive home, the sky began to darken with rain. Raindrops struck the windshield, spreading into streaks of silver light. Evelyn turned on the radio where the announcer was reporting a financial fraud case in the city, a sound that mirrored what was slowly unraveling within her own family. When she arrived home, she changed clothes and lit a scented candle. The stillness of the house made her hear the wind howling outside. She opened her laptop and inserted the USB again. The more she read, the clearer it became how Nathan was manipulating Clara. Text messages appeared between him and someone named Leo. One read, "She's naive. As long as I tell her it's for the baby's future, she'll agree to sell everything." Another said, "Painting sold. Expect the deposit next week." Evelyn clenched her fist. The daughter she had once cradled in her arms was now being led like a puppet. And the man responsible, the one who had once kissed her hand at the wedding, was the one pulling the strings. The landline rang. She answered, and Nathan's falsely cheerful voice came through. "Mom, I heard you met Mr. Alcott this morning. Everything all right?" Evelyn kept her tone calm. Henry just called to confirm the painting's delivery. He said there were some papers to re-sign. "Oh, that's good," Nathan replied quickly, his voice slightly rushed. "Let me handle it, Mom. These things can get complicated." "No need," Evelyn said firmly. "I've already taken care of it. I don't want to trouble anyone anymore." There was a pause on the other end. "Did you just call me Nathan?" "Yes," Evelyn replied coolly. "I think it's about time." She hung up before he could say another word. Standing up, she loosened her shoulders and took a long breath. Outside, thunder rumbled in the distance as if warning of a coming storm. The next morning, Evelyn woke early. She planned to teach her small art class for the local children, but she couldn't shake her unease. She stopped by the post office first, sending a letter to Henry, thanking him for his honesty and for protecting the painting. Then she drove to First Oregon Bank to check the Aurora Fund account, following Rachel's instructions. The young banker looked through the records, then glanced up, eyes wide. "Mrs. Miller, this fund is quite unique. It's secured by triple-layer encryption, and only the original code holder you can access it. But according to our logs, someone tried to log in illegally last week." Evelyn felt heat rush to her face. "Who we haven't confirmed yet, but the IP address traces back to Cole and Partners Realty, Nathan's firm." A surge of anger rose within her, but she kept her voice steady. "Thank you. Please freeze the account until I verify everything." Leaving the bank, she clutched her bag tightly. The pieces were falling into place. Nathan hadn't just sold the painting, he'd also discovered the fund. Maybe he'd overheard David mention it to Clara, or perhaps he'd found old documents. Evelyn pulled over by the roadside, the wind tousling her silver hair. She knew what she had to do next. She needed to uncover Nathan's past completely. That afternoon, she returned to Riverside Gallery. Henry was arranging paintings and looked up when he saw her. "I had a feeling you weren't done yet." "You're right," Evelyn replied. "I wanted to ask if you know anyone else who showed interest in Autumn Light besides the recent buyer." Henry thought for a moment. "Actually, yes. A woman named Margot Fenley. She came here a few times asking about David, said they once worked together on an exhibit in California." Evelyn jotted down the name. "Do you have her contact? I do, just her phone number. But be careful. Margot's an eccentric collector. She buys paintings to study them, not to display. Honestly, I never quite understood her." Evelyn accepted the handwritten note. "Thank you. Maybe she knows something I need to find out." Before leaving, she turned once more to look at Autumn Light. The light in the painting seemed different now, no longer dim, but brighter, stronger, as if reflecting her own resolve. Outside, the sun had broken through the clouds. Evelyn stepped out of the gallery, a calm determination settling over her. She now had 3 things: David's letter, the Aurora Fund, and the name of the woman tied to her husband's past. Deep inside, she could feel one truth more clearly than ever. This was only the beginning. Nathan thought he held the power, but he had no idea that the woman he underestimated was piecing together every fragment of the secret. And once the pieces were complete, the autumn light would no longer be gentle. It would burn through every lie left standing. That night, Evelyn sat alone in the living room, still holding the piece of paper with Margot Fenley's phone number. The warm yellow light cast shadows across her face, deepening every line carved by time and silence. She hesitated for a few seconds, then dialed the number. On the other end, a low, husky woman's voice answered, seasoned and calm. "This is Margot." Evelyn spoke slowly, trying to steady her tone. "I'm David Miller's wife." There was a brief pause, then Margot's voice softened. "He spoke of you often. I'm sorry for your loss. I still remember David's last exhibition in California. A rare talent." Evelyn thanked her, then went straight to the point. "I need to meet you. There are things about the painting, Autumn Light, that I believe you know more about than others." Margot hesitated for a moment, then agreed. Tomorrow, 10 o'clock in the morning, at Verona Cafe corner of Elm and 3rd. The next morning, Evelyn arrived on time. Verona was small and quiet, a place where art lovers came to read or talk softly. Margot appeared in a long gray coat, her blonde hair streaked with silver, her pale blue eyes sharp and intelligent. She carried herself with elegance, though her gaze held both warmth and caution. "You're punctual," Margot said, her tone both friendly and guarded. "Most people just call to ask about a painting's price, not to meet in person." Evelyn sat down and nodded. "I'm not here to talk about money. I'm here to find the truth." Margot gave a faint smile. "Then let's have coffee, and you can tell me why you've come now." Evelyn told her briefly about the sale of the painting, about Nathan, and about David's letter. With each word, Margot grew more thoughtful. When Evelyn mentioned the Aurora Fund, Margot looked up. Aurora Fund, yes. He mentioned it once during a private meeting a few months before he passed. He was worried, said someone was using his name in questionable transactions. I thought he was just being overly cautious. Evelyn looked straight at her. "That someone was my son-in-law." "Do you have any proof?" Margot reached into her bag and pulled out a thin envelope. "You might want to see this." Inside was a copy of a falsified loan agreement bearing David Miller's signature, but the signature was distorted just enough that only someone close would notice it was forged. "Nathan sent me this almost a year ago," Margot explained. "He wanted to use it to secure a loan, claiming David had agreed to use the painting as collateral. I suspected something was wrong, so I refused and sent a copy to David. He didn't say much, only thanked me." Evelyn felt the blood drain from her face. Every suspicion she had was now confirmed. Nathan hadn't just sold the painting, he had forged her husband's signature to steal from them. Margot looked at her with a gentler expression. "David was a man of integrity. He once told me that if anything ever went wrong, only Evelyn would be strong enough to face it. I think he knew you better than anyone else." Evelyn tightened her grip on the coffee cup, the warmth seeping into her palms. "I used to think I was weak," she murmured, "but maybe I was wrong." When she left the cafe, light rain had begun to fall. Evelyn walked slowly along the sidewalk, her chest calm and clear. Each drop of rain seemed to wash away another layer of fog that had hidden the truth. She took out her phone and called Rachel. "I have new evidence," she said firmly. "A forged contract with David's signature and a witness ready to testify." Rachel's voice was quick and composed. "Keep everything as it is. Don't confront him yet. He'll expose himself soon enough." But Evelyn knew that waiting wasn't enough. Clara was still living with that man, still believing his lies. She couldn't stand by any longer. That evening, Clara called. Her voice sounded light, almost cheerful. "Mom, I have great news. The loan for the Maple Heights house has been approved. Nathan said all we need is your signature to transfer Dad's land into my name, so the bank can finalize everything." Evelyn felt her heart tighten. "Transfer it into your name? Do you even realize what you're saying?" Clara hesitated. "Mom, it's just paperwork. The bank needs to verify the family assets. Nathan said I'll still keep full inheritance rights later." Evelyn listened to the rain outside and her voice lowered. "Clara, are you sure you know exactly what those documents mean?" Clara's tone shifted, slightly defensive. "Mom, please stop doubting him. Dad's gone. We have to move forward." Evelyn wanted to scream but held herself back. "Fine," she said quietly. "I'll sign, but on one condition. You and Nathan must come to my house this weekend. We'll do everything together in person with a witness." Clara sounded surprised but agreed. "All right, Mom. The sooner the better." When the call ended, Evelyn sat still for a long time. She knew this would be the final confrontation. The next morning, she went to see Henry at the gallery and told him everything. He listened without interrupting, then asked, "What do you plan to do?" Evelyn's voice was calm but hard as steel. "I'll let them reveal their greed, and when they do, I'll have everything words proof and witnesses." Henry looked at her for a long moment, admiration in his eyes. "David always said you had courage. Now I see why." Evelyn asked him to help her prepare a small hidden camera inside a flower vase and to make a replica of Autumn Light. She didn't explain why, only said, "Keep the real one here. I just need them to believe they're holding the original." Henry nodded. "Understood. Let's call it a special exhibition piece." On Saturday afternoon, Clara and Nathan arrived. The sky was clear sunlight slanting through the windows and glinting off the polished wooden floor. Evelyn had prepared the papers, a pot of tea, and placed the painting in the center of the room. Nathan's eyes flicked immediately to it, a smug smile curling on his lips. "You kept it here. I thought you returned it to the gallery." Evelyn looked at him evenly. "I changed my mind. It's my husband's keepsake after all." Clara came over to hug her mother, but Evelyn felt the distance between them. Her daughter's warmth had faded, replaced by the cool tone of someone accustomed to comfort and control. Nathan pulled out the papers, his voice smooth. "Here's the temporary transfer agreement so the bank can process the loan. You can cancel it any time later." Evelyn nodded, pretending to hesitate. "I'll read it carefully. And the painting, I want to give it to both of you as a gift for your new home." Both Clara and Nathan froze in surprise. "Really, Mom?" Clara exclaimed, hugging her again. Nathan's eyes gleamed, unable to hide the hunger behind them. Evelyn signed the papers, then laid down the pen deliberately. "I have only one request," she said. "Let's take a family photo together. I want to remember this moment to honor the lesson your father taught us, that family should be cherished." Nathan laughed, readily agreeing. They stood beside the painting, and Evelyn smiled faintly. The hidden camera in the vase flashed, capturing every word, even the moment when Nathan leaned toward Clara and whispered, "Now it's all officially ours. This painting alone could sell for a fortune." Evelyn heard every word but kept her smile. When they left, taking the documents and the replica painting, she stood in the fading light of sunset, her heart steady and strong. The plan was complete. This time she wasn't the helpless one. As night fell, she turned on her computer and sent the recorded footage to Rachel, along with a brief message, "I have the evidence." They confessed. "Tomorrow we begin." Outside, the wind swept through the maple trees, scattering golden leaves that spun beneath the streetlights like tiny sparks of fire. Evelyn smiled softly and closed the curtains. The game was over, and the woman everyone thought lived only in her memories now held all the power in her hands. The next morning, Evelyn woke earlier than usual. The soft light filtered through the curtains, spreading thinly across the wooden floor. She brewed a pot of tea and poured it into a porcelain cup engraved with the letters D&M, the initials of her and David's names, a wedding gift from years ago. As she took her first sip, the phone rang. It was Rachel. Her voice was calm but urgent. "You did wonderfully, Evelyn. The footage is enough to prove deliberate intent to commit fraud and asset misappropriation. I'll send it to the police and file a petition with the court to freeze all transactions related to the painting and David's estate. But you need to be ready. They won't take this quietly." Evelyn's reply was short. "I'm not afraid. What I fear is silence." After hanging up, she stood by the window and looked out at the garden. The morning sunlight fell over the rose bushes David had planted years ago. The air smelled of damp earth and carried the songs of birds. A new day had begun, yet inside Evelyn a storm was brewing. Around 10 o'clock, Clara called. Her voice trembled with panic. "Mom, what's happening?" The police came to Nathan's office. They said they're investigating contract fraud. "Do you know anything about this?" Evelyn sat down, her voice steady and unnervingly calm. "Yes, I do, because I was the one who reported it." There was silence on the line. "Mom, what did you say?" "My dear," Evelyn said slowly, "I don't recognize you anymore. You once promised you'd never let anyone hurt this family. Yet here you are standing beside a man who uses you for his own gain. I stayed silent because I hoped you'd see it for yourself, but silence now would be a sin." Clara sobbed, anger breaking through her tears. "You've destroyed my marriage. Nathan didn't mean to do this. He just wanted to help us start fresh." Evelyn closed her eyes. "If your new beginning is built on lies, you'll never find happiness. Your father left behind his legacy to be cherished, not used as leverage for loans." The call ended in tears. Evelyn set the phone down, her heart heavy as stone. She knew she had done the right thing, yet the pain was undeniable. In exposing Nathan, she had shattered her daughter's illusions. By noon, Henry called, his voice filled with concern. "I just saw Nathan at the gallery. He demanded to take the painting. I told him the real one was under inspection, but he lost his temper. I think you should stay somewhere safe." Evelyn thanked him and carefully locked the doors, drawing the curtains shut. She knew Henry would protect the painting, but Nathan wasn't the kind of man to give up easily. She needed to prepare her next step to prove that Clara, too, had been a victim. Later that afternoon, Rachel arrived at the house carrying a stack of files and a court-issued document, an order to seize the painting, Autumn Light, and freeze Nathan Cole's assets. "He'll be facing charges for fraud and forgery," Rachel said. "But I think you should talk to Clara. She's collapsing emotionally, and you're the only one who can bring her back." Evelyn stayed quiet for a moment, then nodded. "Can you arrange a private meeting between us? I'll try." Rachel replied, then added, "There's one more thing. David's letter mentioned someone named Margot Fenley, listed among those he trusted. She might know more about the real origins of the Aurora Fund." Evelyn looked surprised. "I've already met Margot. She's the one who gave me Nathan's forged contract." Rachel smiled faintly. "Then fate has already taken care of it. When honest people find each other, lies have nowhere left to hide." That evening, Clara arrived. Her face was pale, her eyes red and swollen. "Mom." "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I didn't know Nathan was doing those things. I thought he just wanted to keep us together." Evelyn said nothing at first. She handed Clara her phone, playing the recording where Nathan's cold voice whispered, "Now everything is officially ours. This painting alone could sell for a fortune." Clara covered her mouth and broke down in tears. You see, Evelyn said softly, "Real love never needs deceit to survive. Your father knew this long ago. He created the Aurora Fund not to make me rich, but to protect you when I could no longer do it myself." Clara looked up, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I was so blind, Mom. I chose the wrong side." Evelyn wrapped her arms around her daughter. "We all make mistakes. What matters is whether we're brave enough to face them." In that moment, Evelyn felt as though David was standing somewhere in the room, smiling gently at them. The weight she had carried for months lifted from her heart. The next day, the local newspaper ran the headline, "Businessman Nathan Cole arrested for financial fraud and forgery of deceased artist's signature." The neighborhood buzzed with gossip. People who once admired the couple now looked at Evelyn with a mix of sympathy and respect. But she didn't need their approval. All she wanted was peace. Clara moved back home temporarily. Every morning, the two of them shared tea in silence, gazing through the window where sunlight touched the empty wall. One morning, Clara asked quietly, "Mom, what will you do with the painting?" Evelyn's voice was gentle but firm. "It will never be sold. It will go back to where it belongs. But I have another idea. I want to turn the Aurora Fund into a foundation to support young artists, your father's foundation." Clara took her mother's hand and nodded. "I want to help." In the days that followed, they gathered documents and drafted plans for what would become the David Miller Art Foundation. Henry and Margot volunteered as art advisors, and Rachel handled the legal work. The four of them sat together in Evelyn's wooden house, brainstorming ideas for their first exhibition, Autumn Light Reborn from Loss. When everything was nearly ready, Evelyn received a handwritten letter with no return address. Inside were a few lines written in blue ink. "Thank you for believing in me. When you read this, remember, light never dies. It only changes direction. David." She smiled as tears rolled down her cheeks, but this time they weren't tears of sorrow. She folded the letter and placed it on the windowsill. That evening, Henry stopped by with good news. The gallery has agreed to display the original Autumn Light for the Foundation's opening exhibit. They said it deserves to be seen again under its true light. Evelyn nodded, gazing out at the darkening sky. "It'll be the first time since he passed that I won't feel alone." Henry smiled. "I think David's still here, just in another form, and I'm sure he's very proud." Evelyn didn't respond, only smiled softly. Outside, the autumn wind stirred again, carrying the scent of dry leaves and roses through the night. She stood still for a long moment, then whispered to herself, "I kept my promise, David. No one will ever touch our autumn light again." The house was quiet. On the wall, the once empty space now held a faint reflection of the desk lamp, a soft shimmer like a stray beam of sunlight from the painting itself. Evelyn sat down and began writing the first lines of the Foundation's mission statement, purpose, to help young artists keep faith in their art, even when the world tries to steal it from them. She set her pen down and looked out the window. The rain had stopped and a crescent moon rose beyond the trees. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt truly at peace, not because she had won, but because the light had finally returned to where it belonged. A week after Nathan's arrest, the town of Maple Hollow fell into an uneasy silence. The same people who once praised the young couple now whispered about them in supermarkets, cafes, and Sunday church gatherings. The name Evelyn Miller was now spoken with two new words attached to it, resilient and admirable. But Evelyn paid no attention. She spent her days at home sorting through David's belongings, cleaning his dusty studio, and restoring the easel where he had once sat. In that room, the morning light streamed softly through the window. On the desk, David's journal still lay open, its final pages yellowed and trembling with the traces of his shaky handwriting. She turned the pages and stopped at a line that tightened her chest. If someone ever hurts, you don't react with anger. React with truth. Truth is the strongest weapon. Evelyn gently touched the words as if she could still feel her husband's warmth in them. When Rachel stopped by later that afternoon, she carried a thick folder. The court has officially approved the freeze on Nathan Cole's assets. The Aurora Fund is now under your legal control. We can begin converting it into the David Miller Art Foundation. Evelyn smiled, the relief in her eyes soft and deep. Thank you, Rachel. Without you, I wouldn't have made it this far. Rachel sat down, her gaze glowing with admiration. Honestly, I just did my job. The one who truly changed everything was you. Not many people have the courage to stand up to their own child. Evelyn exhaled, her eyes distant. It wasn't courage, Rachel. It was pain. But I've learned that some pain is necessary, like pruning a diseased branch, to save the tree. That evening, after Rachel left, Evelyn sat before the wall where Autumn Light had once hung. The real painting was still at Henry's gallery, being carefully protected for the upcoming exhibition. She looked at the empty space, but no longer felt its void. Instead, she imagined the golden light from the painting spreading through the house, warming every corner of memory. The next morning, Henry called, his voice unusually cheerful. Good news, Evelyn David's memorial exhibition will open at the end of the month. The gallery wants you to deliver the opening speech. Evelyn hesitated. Me, I'm not a speaker. Henry laughed. No one else could tell the story more truthfully than you. She agreed. That night she played the old tapes David had recorded for his students. His voice filled the room, gentle yet steady. Painting isn't the art of seeing, it's the art of feeling. When people paint, they say things words can't express. Evelyn closed her eyes, letting his voice wash over her, and whispered, "Then I'll speak my part. David, in your way." On the day of the advisory meeting, rain poured heavily outside. Margot Fenley arrived early, wearing a black raincoat, her wet hair clinging to her face. She carried a large folder. These are profiles of young artists we could support. I've chosen a few who remind me of David in his early years. Evelyn accepted the folder with a smile. Thank you. I believe David would have liked that. Henry came in carrying a tray of coffee while Rachel spread the project outline across the table. We'll use the Aurora Fund's initial profits to create scholarships 3 recipients each year. Riverside Gallery will host an annual exhibition titled Autumn Light. Evelyn nodded, her expression bright. I want the first recipient to be Jake, my student. He's studying art in Portland but can't afford his supplies. Margot jotted the name down quickly. I'll contact his school. And about Nathan, he's hired a new lawyer. They're claiming he acted under financial pressure and was manipulated by his partners. Evelyn's smile curved slightly. People always find excuses to justify their greed, but that's fine. I'm not seeking revenge. I just want the truth to be remembered. The room fell quiet for a moment. Henry looked at her and said softly, Evelyn, you didn't just protect David's legacy. You saved Clara, too. You did what few mothers would dare to do. Evelyn shook her head. I only followed the path David had already drawn. He always saw further than I could. Late that afternoon, Clara entered Riverside Gallery. She wore a simple dress, her hair tied back, the glamour of her old life gone. When she saw her mother standing beside Autumn Light, she stopped. Evelyn turned her gaze, tender yet firm. You came. Clara stepped closer, looking up at the painting. The golden-orange light fell on the woman's face within it, a face serene, her eyes gazing into the distance. Dad painted you, didn't he? Clara asked, her voice breaking. Evelyn smiled softly. Yes. He said he didn't need to take my picture because he'd already captured me in every shade of color. They stood in silence, listening to the rain tapping against the glass roof. At last, Clara spoke. "Mom, I'm sorry. I let blind faith lead me astray." Evelyn placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "No one is free from mistakes, my dear. What matters is that you came back before it was too late. I want to be part of the foundation." Clara said quickly, her voice filled with resolve. "I want to handle communications, help people learn about the artists we'll support." Evelyn studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "All right, but this time tell me, why are you doing it?" Clara drew a deep breath. "For Dad. And because I've learned the greatest lesson of all. Greed takes everything, but kindness gives back what we thought was lost." Evelyn smiled, tears shimmering in her eyes. "Your father would be proud." That evening, when she returned home alone, Evelyn opened the door to the studio. The air smelled faintly of rain and paint. She placed a fresh white canvas on the easel. It had been years since she last painted. Her hand trembled as she lifted the brush, but soon steadied. The first stroke appeared a soft curve, like the outline of a mountain beneath a sunset. Then came the hues of amber, brown, and gold, blending into a light that felt both dusk and dawn. She painted for hours until exhaustion took over. When she finally set the brush down, the canvas revealed two hands intertwined, one bold and masculine, the other delicate and bright. Beneath it, Evelyn wrote a small line, "For David, because the light still remains." She stepped back to look at it. The moonlight streaming through the window caught the surface of the painting, making the painted hands glisten as if truly touching one last time. Evelyn whispered, "I did it, David." Outside, the rain had stopped. The full moon hung high in the sky, casting its glow through the window and flooding the studio with a gentle light. That light reached the new painting, reflecting softly across Evelyn's face until her eyes glimmered. There was no pain now, no anger, only gratitude. Gratitude for the man she loved, for life itself, and for the strength within her. Downstairs, the clock struck 9. Evelyn turned off the lamp, yet the room remained illuminated by moonlight. As she closed the door, the painting on the easel still shimmered with a tender golden glow, like an old promise. Whispering quietly through the air, the autumn light will never fade. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the curtains, golden and soft like honey. Evelyn woke after a long night, her mind surprisingly clear. She walked down the stairs, the wooden steps creaking gently beneath her feet. On the kitchen table lay a small note from Clara Mom. "I went to the gallery early to prepare for the exhibition meeting. I'll be home for dinner. Love you." Evelyn smiled faintly, brushing her fingers over the thin paper. A warmth she hadn't felt in a long time welled up inside her. Her daughter, once lost, had finally found her way back, and Evelyn knew David would be smiling somewhere. The morning passed quietly. Evelyn sat in the studio adjusting a few strokes on her new painting. She had titled it Reunion. Every brush stroke felt like both a farewell and a beginning. She could almost sense David behind her watching her paint, nodding approvingly from time to time. Around noon, the phone rang. It was Henry, his voice brimming with excitement. "Evelyn, I just got word from the city press. They want to interview you about the upcoming exhibition. Your story and David's are spreading everywhere. Everyone wants to know how a woman could protect her husband's legacy with such strength." Evelyn hesitated. "I'm not sure I'm the right person for those kinds of questions, Henry. I only did what I had to do." Henry chuckled softly. "And that's exactly why they want to hear you speak. When a true story is told in a genuine voice, it touches hearts." Evelyn agreed. That afternoon, a young reporter arrived at the house with a camera and a recorder. He spoke gently, respectfully. "Mrs. Miller, what kept you from giving up even after being betrayed by someone in your own family?" Evelyn looked toward the window, her voice calm but steady. Because true love doesn't die when a person does. It only changes form. It becomes the light that guides those left behind. And when someone betrays me, I don't seek revenge. I simply hold up the light so they can see themselves." The reporter was silent for a moment, then said quietly, "Thank you. I think many people need to hear that." After the interview, Evelyn stepped into the garden. The rose bush by the porch had begun to bloom again, its petals thin as silk, its fragrance gentle as the early summer breeze. She cut a single stem and placed it on the windowsill of her studio. Suddenly, the phone rang again. This time it was Rachel. "Evelyn, I need to inform you about something. Nathan's lawyer just filed a motion for bail. They claim he's been cooperating with investigators and providing information about others involved." Evelyn was silent, then asked, "What does that mean?" Rachel replied, "It means he's likely trying to lessen his sentence. But don't worry, the police have more than enough evidence. Even if he's released, he's forbidden to approach you or Clara. The restraining order has already been signed." Evelyn exhaled quietly, though an uneasy feeling lingered. She wasn't afraid of Nathan, but she knew his kind when a man like him loses everything he often tries to destroy what others have left. That evening, when Clara returned home, she looked tired, but glowing. "The meeting went great, Mom. Henry said the gallery is redesigning everything to match Dad's old studio golden orange lighting oak wood and cinnamon oil scent just like before. You have to see it." Evelyn smiled. "I'll be there. Your father will be proud." Clara squeezed her mother's hand. "I want to give the thank you speech at the opening, not for Dad, but for myself, for the daughter who once made mistakes but was forgiven." Evelyn held her hand tighter. "You don't need to speak for anyone else. Just speak from your heart." That night, after they went to bed, the wind picked up, carrying the sound of rain tapping softly on the roof. Evelyn couldn't sleep. She went downstairs, made a cup of tea, and sat by the window watching the rain. Suddenly, headlights flashed outside. A black car stopped at the corner across the street, its engine still running, but no one stepped out. She squinted through the rain, trying to see, but the downpour blurred her view. A chill crept down her spine. She turned off the light and drew the curtains. Probably just a neighbor coming home late, she told herself, but the unease in her chest wouldn't fade. The next morning, Henry called, his voice tense. "Evelyn, someone tried to break into the gallery last night." The guard found the back door pried open. Luckily, nothing was stolen, but they saw a man in a dark coat running down the street. Evelyn's heartbeat quickened. "You think it was Nathan Henry?" Hesitated. "Not certain, but it's possible. I've already called the police. Please be careful for a few days." Evelyn glanced around her house. Everything looked the same, yet something in the air had changed, as if someone had passed through. She locked the doors and pulled the curtains tight. Instead of fear, a sharp, steady calm rose within her. If Nathan dared to return, he would face a version of Evelyn he'd never known, a woman no longer swayed by emotion or afraid of loss. That afternoon, Clara came home early. "Mom, I saw the news. Someone broke into the gallery." "Are you all right?" Evelyn reassured her. "I'm fine, dear. Just a small incident. But remember, always lock your doors and don't go out alone at night." Clara nodded and hugged her, the scent of her hair soothing Evelyn's heart. "Don't worry, Mom. I'll be careful. We're about to open the exhibition. Everything's going to be fine." That night, Evelyn sat down to write her speech for the opening ceremony. Each line felt like a message of gratitude. She wrote about David, about light, about the power of faith, and about forgiving those who once caused pain. Because forgiveness, she wrote, is not forgetting, but allowing the light to shine through the cracks. Outside, the rain had stopped. A crescent moon rose thin and silver as a thread. Evelyn closed her notebook, turned off the lamp, and glanced out the window again. The black car was gone, but something glimmered on the sidewalk metal, catching the moonlight. The next morning, she went out to look. It was a lighter engraved with the initials NC. She held it in her hand without hesitation, slipped it into her coat pocket, and called Rachel. "Tell the police I think he's come back." Evelyn said, her voice calm, almost casual. "But don't worry. If he wants to talk, I'll let him finish his story." She hung up and turned toward Reunion, still drying on the easel. The morning light reflected on the surface, making the painted hands appear as if they were moving. Evelyn whispered, "Come then, Nathan. I'm ready. This time you won't take anything but the truth." And in that quiet wooden house, the woman once thought to be fragile sat alone waiting for the next storm, not with fear, but with the steady resolve of someone who had faced every possible loss and had nothing left to lose except the justice she was determined to protect until the very end. That night the rain returned, each drop tapping steadily against the tin roof like the slow beat of a drum. Evelyn sat by the window, the lamplight casting patches of gold and shadow across her face. The lighter, engraved with the initials NC, lay in front of her, glinting under the warm glow. She turned it slowly in her hand, feeling the cold weight of the metal as if it still carried the breath of a man who once believed he could control the world. Near 11 o'clock, the phone rang. It was Rachel. Her voice was tense. "Evelyn, I just got word. Nathan was granted bail this morning. He left the detention center this afternoon and disappeared. The police are tracking him, but you need to be very careful. They believe he might try to approach you or Clara." Evelyn took a deep breath. "I know. I've already seen signs of him. Let them do their job. I'm not hiding. I've run long enough." After hanging up, Evelyn stood, locked the doors, and drew the curtains. She walked through the house, checking every window, every latch. The home was quiet, the only sound the ticking of the clock. In the kitchen, she brewed a pot of tea but didn't drink it. Her hands didn't shake, and her eyes didn't leave the darkness beyond the glass. Then came a faint sound like pebbles hitting the window. She turned quickly. Nothing. But instinct told her someone was close. She turned off the lights, sat down, and held her breath. Outside, the rain continued, yet beneath its rhythm she heard soft footsteps, followed by the creak of the iron gate. Evelyn rose calm and composed. She picked up her phone and typed a short message to Rachel. "He's here." Then she slipped the phone into her pocket and stepped into the hallway where the dim light from the porch spilled through the cracks in the door. A shadow appeared outside, tall, broad-shouldered hat pulled low. The door rattled and the lock clicked. "Nathan," Evelyn said clearly, her voice steady. "If you've come this far, then come in. No need to sneak." The door opened slowly. Nathan stepped in his clothes, soaked his eyes red, not from remorse, but from fury. "Mother," he sneered. "I should still call you that, shouldn't I? After everything, you're still so calm. You've made me lose everything, my career, my reputation, my freedom." "Are you proud of yourself?" Evelyn stood her ground, meeting his gaze. "You lost everything because you burned it yourself. I only held up a light to show you the fire." Nathan gave a dry laugh. "A light? You mean revenge. You wanted to turn me into a monster so you could look like the saint. That's the hypocrisy of lonely old women." Evelyn looked at him, her eyes filled not with anger, but with a deep exhaustion. "My daughter used to say things like that when she was young every time her father scolded her for doing wrong. But David always explained patiently, 'I'll do the same. I don't hate you, Nathan. I only despise the weakness in you, the part that believes destroying others is the only way to be seen.'" Nathan stepped closer, his voice low and tight. "You don't understand. I wasn't born to lose. All my life I've lived in the shadows of people like David, like Clara, like you. I tried to build something for myself, but everyone saw me as a parasite. I needed to prove my worth." And so, Evelyn said slowly, you chose deceit, forgery, betrayal of the very people who loved you. You didn't prove your worth, you proved your greed. Nathan clenched his fists, his eyes flashing like blades. Do you have any idea what I lost? I loved Clara. I wanted to give her a better life, but I was in debt, and I knew David had money assets. I just borrowed a little. If things had gone smoothly, I would have paid it all back. There is no debt that justifies betrayal. Evelyn replied, her voice firming. David once said that when a man starts excusing his lies, he's already chosen a path he can't return from. Nathan burst out laughing, the sound echoing through the small house. David, David. It's always David. He's dead and still he haunts everyone, but I won't let him control me anymore. He pulled a folding knife from his coat, its steel glinting under the light. I didn't come here to apologize. I came to take back what's mine. Evelyn didn't move. She stared at him steadily. If what you want is the painting or money, they're not here. If what you want is forgiveness, I don't have the right to give it. Only justice can. Outside, the faint wail of sirens broke through the rain. Nathan flinched, glancing toward the window. You called them Evelyn. Raised her hand slightly, her fingers closing over the phone in her pocket. I didn't have to. You brought them yourself the moment you chose to come back. He lunged forward, yanking the phone from her hand and throwing it to the floor. But Evelyn had already stepped back. In that instant, the back door burst open. Henry entered with 2 police officers. Nathan Cole. You're under arrest for violating a restraining order and threatening harm, one officer declared. Nathan turned his face contorted with rage. This was all your plan, wasn't it? Evelyn's voice was calm, steady. No, Nathan. This is the ending you drew for yourself. I'm just watching it unfold. He struggled as the officers cuffed him. You can't win forever. One day everyone will see you for what you are, a woman using a dead man's name to make herself look righteous. The door closed behind him, leaving the house filled with the scent of rain and damp air. Henry turned to her, his voice worried. Are you all right? Evelyn nodded. I'm fine. It's over now. As the police car drove away and the sound of sirens faded, Evelyn leaned against the wall and exhaled. Henry placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. You're stronger than anyone I've ever met. Evelyn smiled faintly, a tear glimmering in her eye. No, Henry. I'm just a woman who refused to let her husband's light be tarnished. I kept my promise. Henry said nothing more. He understood that what she had just endured wasn't only a confrontation with a betrayer, but the final battle of a mother trying to save her family from the darkness. Later that night, after Henry left, Evelyn stayed awake listening to the rhythmic ticking of the clock. The phone rang. It was Clara. Her voice choked with tears. Mom, the police just called. He's been arrested again. Are you okay? Evelyn answered softly. I'm fine. Don't cry anymore. Some things have to end so that you can go on living. I'm sorry, Mom. I didn't know he'd dare come back. Evelyn's voice was gentle as a breeze. No one can change the past, but you can rebuild the present. Now focus on the exhibition. Let everyone see your father's true light. Clara sniffled. I promise. After hanging up, Evelyn looked around the house. Everything was calm again. The faint scent of cooled tea, the lingering smell of rain, and the subtle trace of lavender from David's room. She walked into the studio and opened the window. The sky had cleared and the moon shone softly over the yard. She looked at the painting, Reunion, its surface glimmering under the moonlight as if alive. Evelyn whispered as though speaking to the unseen, I've kept everything safe, David. Your light, our daughter, and the faith you left behind. At that moment, a gentle breeze stirred the curtain, and a shaft of moonlight slipped through, illuminating the two hands in the painting, making them seem to touch once more. Evelyn stood still, then smiled faintly. Outside, dawn crept slowly over the valley mist, floating in the air, birds singing into the warmth of morning. For the first time in years, Evelyn felt a peace that was complete. No more debts, no more fear, no more shadows. Only light the light. David had left behind the light that no one could ever steal. She poured a fresh cup of tea and sat by the window watching the sun rise. The house was the same, yet it felt wider, lighter. A new chapter was beginning, and Evelyn knew that this time it would no longer be a battle. It would be a journey toward peace. The first morning after the rain, the sky over Maple Hollow was crystal clear, as if it had just been washed clean. Sunlight spread over the rooftops, golden rays glinting off the drops of water still clinging to the leaves. Evelyn stood on the porch, a cup of tea in her hand, breathing in the crisp morning air. Inside her was a strange feeling, peaceful but not empty. The storms had passed, and the house, after all it had endured, still stood firm just like she did. A week went by, and Nathan was officially prosecuted. The court denied his bail request and transferred his case to a higher court. The newspapers reported it briefly, without sensationalism, just one small headline: businessman Nathan Cole, indicted for fraud and forgery of artistic assets. Evelyn read it, then folded the paper. She didn't feel joy, only relief. Justice, when it arrives on time, never needs applause. Clara grew stronger with each passing day. She devoted all her time to helping Henry and Margot finalize the Autumn Light exhibition. Every morning she sent her mother pictures of the gallery being arranged, walls newly painted in amber tones, lights directed toward each frame, the warm glow resembling the sun at dusk. One evening, Clara called and said, "Mom, the Autumn Light painting is placed right in the center beneath the line. I chose. The light never fades. It only changes form. Henry said it was something you once told him." Evelyn smiled softly, her heart swelling with quiet pride. The day of the opening arrived. The town was unusually lively. The Riverside Gallery shone brightly with dozens of people lining up outside, former students of Evelyn's journalists who had once reported on the story, and townsfolk who had followed her journey. When she entered, the murmurs stopped. All eyes turned toward the silver-haired woman in a pale blue dress, walking with calm grace, as if she had never endured any storm at all. Henry approached, smiling gently. "It's time," he said. Evelyn nodded and stepped onto the small stage at the center of the hall. A warm light illuminated her. She took a deep breath and began to speak. "I am not an artist nor a wealthy woman. I'm simply someone who once lost everything until I realized there are things that can never be stolen: memory, love, and truth." Her voice was steady, clear. "David once taught me that light isn't just something to see, but it's something to believe in. When we believe that light will guide us through any darkness." The room was silent. Evelyn looked up at the Autumn Light painting before her. The golden hues reflected across the walls, filling the space with warmth. She smiled. "This is not just a painting. It is a promise that kindness can be tested but never extinguished." When she stepped down, applause erupted, long, heartfelt, and warm. Clara rushed to her, embracing her tightly. "I'm so proud of you, Mom," she whispered. Henry and Margot stood nearby, eyes glistening. No one said another word. Everything that needed to be said had already been painted, already been lived. That night, after the guests had gone, Evelyn stayed with Henry to help lock up the gallery. She turned for one last look. The light from the painting glowed across the wooden floor like a living flame. "He'll be at peace now," Henry said softly. Evelyn replied, her voice calm but full of meaning. No, not yet, because this light is meant to continue. It doesn't end with us. As they left the gallery, a cool breeze swept through the street carrying the scent of coffee and wildflowers. Clara walked beside her mother, holding her hand. "Mom, I was thinking," she said, "what if we start free art classes through the foundation for underprivileged kids in town?" Evelyn squeezed her daughter's hand, her eyes warm. "That's exactly what your father would have wanted to help others see their own light." That night, when they returned home, Evelyn didn't turn on the lights. She let the moon illuminate the room, its soft glow falling over the painting, Reunion, hanging on the wall. The two hands in the painting still seemed to touch, bathed in the pale gold of moonlight. She sat down, peace filling every corner of her heart. Outside, the dry leaves rustled and an owl called from somewhere distant. Evelyn closed her eyes. In her mind, she heard David's voice clear as if he were beside her. "You did it, Evelyn." "Our light still remains." She smiled. "Yes, David. It remains and it always will." On the table, moonlight shimmered against the glass frame of Reunion. Tiny particles of dust sparkled in the air like fragments of light. The house was silent yet alive, as if the breath of the one who was gone lingered still, mingling with the gentle warmth of autumn's return. A month after the exhibition, autumn arrived in full at Maple Hollow. The maple trees in front of the house turned crimson and gold, their leaves swirling around the porch like tiny letters sent from the heavens. Evelyn woke early, brewed her tea, and opened the window to let in the earthy scent of damp soil and the chill of morning wind. The house had returned to peace, but it was no longer the peace of solitude. It was the peace of someone who had walked through the storm and was still standing tall. That morning, Clara arrived early with a stack of folders. Mom, the foundation has received 12 scholarship applications. 3 stand out the most. They're all poor art students, but incredibly talented. I think you should choose. Evelyn sat down, opened each file, and read slowly. Each student's story warmed her heart. A 19-year-old girl who painted to escape her illness, a boy who used leftover paint and broken brushes to capture the beauty of his village, and a young orphan who dreamed of opening a free art class for children. "We'll choose all 3, Evelyn said firmly, "because light should never discriminate. Everyone deserves to see it." Clara nodded, her eyes bright. "You know, Mom, I've never felt Dad's presence so clearly as I have lately. Maybe because every time I help someone, I can almost see him smiling." Evelyn smiled softly. "That's because he always believed art never dies, as long as someone keeps it alive." Henry called with news that made both women pause. The court has issued its final ruling. Nathan has been sentenced to 12 years in prison, with the possibility of reduction if he fully cooperates. He signed a confession. Evelyn thanked him, her voice calm but steady. After hanging up, Clara bowed her head. "Mom, I'm grateful you forgave me. Without you, I would have lost everything." Evelyn placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder. "I didn't forgive you because you asked for it. I forgave you because if I didn't, I would be just like him, living in hatred. Forgiveness is how I set myself free." That afternoon, the sky was clear as glass. Henry stopped by with Margot carrying an invitation from the Oregon State Art Institute. They wanted to purchase the rights to host a national traveling exhibition of autumn light. They said, "Your story has touched thousands of people." Henry said, his voice thick with emotion. Evelyn smiled gently. "David would love that. He always said paintings should never stay locked in one place." Margot grinned. "And now it's going everywhere, carrying your story with it." Evelyn looked out the window where the late sunlight poured golden as honey. If it can help someone believe in themselves, then that's the greatest gift I could ever give the world." After they left, Clara brought out an old wooden box. "Mom, I found this in Dad's cabinet. I think you should open it." Evelyn lifted the lid. Inside were old photographs, their wedding day, his first exhibition, and a note written in David's familiar hand. "When the light returns, live don't just exist." She read it softly, placing her hand over the page, her eyes glistening. "I am living David, truly living." That evening, mother and daughter cooked together. As Clara chopped vegetables, she said, "Mom, I want to enroll in a community art program. I think I'd like to teach kids to paint just like you used to." Evelyn looked at her daughter and saw in her eyes the peace and purpose she once feared Clara would never find. "Do it, Clara. Teaching others to see beauty is how you keep the light alive." After dinner, they sat on the porch, listening to the crickets singing in the garden. Above them, stars shimmered, reflecting in their cups of hot tea. Clara rested her head on her mother's shoulder and whispered, "Mom, I think Dad's somewhere up there watching us." Evelyn replied softly, "Your father never left. He's in the paintings, in the foundation, in the kindness we live every day. Every time you choose love over anger, you'll see him." A gentle breeze passed through, carrying the scent of roses and the faint trace of paint lingering in the house. Evelyn looked up at the sky, her eyes shining. The years of pain had receded like a distant dream. Ahead, she saw clearly the path before her, a simple life with nothing left to prove, only to love to teach and to keep the light alive. A week later, the traveling exhibition officially opened in Portland. Evelyn, Clara, Henry, and Margot stood together on stage. When the curtain lifted, autumn light shone brilliantly under hundreds of spotlights. The applause that followed echoed like David's heartbeat from somewhere beyond. Clara stepped forward to speak, her voice clear and full of emotion. "I grew up in this light. It didn't just come from my father, the artist David Miller, but from my mother, who taught me that true strength is choosing love over hatred." The audience fell silent, then burst into applause. Evelyn looked at her daughter with pride, as though seeing the masterpiece of her own life. She knew she had fulfilled what David had entrusted her with, not just keeping the light, but passing it on. That night, they went to the river nearby. The water reflected the city lights like 1,000 shards of glass. Evelyn sat on a wooden bench, gazing at the flowing water, her heart calm. Henry handed her a cup of tea and asked gently, "What will you do next?" Evelyn smiled. "I'll return to Maple Hollow. My students are waiting and I want to paint again. My story isn't finished yet, Henry. There are still so many people who need the light." Later that night, back at the hotel, Evelyn opened the window, letting the river breeze flow in. She took out her sketchbook and wrote the first line for her next painting, "Autumn light, the next chapter." Below it, she added in small letters, "For those still walking in darkness, so they remember that if they believe, the light will find them." Outside, the river kept flowing, the moon kept shining, and in the quiet room, the woman once thought fragile was writing the final chapter of her journey, a chapter without pain, filled only with hope. And when the desk lamp went out, the light remained shining through the window, falling softly across Evelyn's face, as if David were smiling, as if autumn itself had returned once more.